much for being on fire for life, and thank you for all your support. Now, all these, oh my, like 15 years. Andrea and I have been doing this show, and it's had many names. From good to amazing was true for a number of years, and we needed something a little different, and then we were the intentional spirit. And we just decided, just throw all that out there and let's just be on fire for life. And as I say every week, I love that quote Howard Thurman said, you know, stop thinking about what you feel the world needs, because what the world needs is more people to be alive. And that's what we focus on. Wherever I travel, I always keep my eyes and ears open for people that they have that. They have that spark, they have that life force that we all really are designed to have. And that's the dichotomy of life, is that you may go through a lot, you may have challenges, you may be recovering from addiction, you may be with addiction now, you may have gone through a number of things, good, bad, and indifferent, and yet on the other side of it, you can have more energy than what you started with. And that's what we are about. And that's what the guest today is about. I do want to say thank you to Global Peace Workers and to ILI.org for your sponsorship. We very much appreciate you, and we're always looking for sponsors for this show. So thank you for being with us. And now I'm going to bring in, as you will see for yourself, the one and only, the spark plug, the energy girl, Reverend Christina Jones. How are you, my dear?
I am well. The spark plug. I am well. I am sparked up.
You are sparked up, and you owe me $20.
Yes, I do. That's awesome.
Oh no! I mean, I had the good pleasure a couple of months ago. It's hard to believe it's been that long, but I was in Denver, and I had the good pleasure of being invited to participate at the Althea Center, where Christina serves as the spiritual leader. And wow, what a place! It goes on record of being one of the most beautiful centers I've ever been in. But that being said, I know you didn't start there. That wasn't your first life assignment, and we are going to talk about that. But how did you become interested in making a difference in the world in the first place? What has part of your journey been in your life that made you shapeshift to say, "This is where I want to put my focus now"?
Well, I will say it was a calling as a child, as
Okay.
my mom and my aunt would watch the Phil Donahue show, and my mom was into metaphysics, so there was always some self-help books around before it was a thing. I'm talking the 70s, and
Mm-hmm.
especially in the 80s. It wasn't until my 20s that at the time my mom was working at the Association for Research and Enlightenment, the Edgar Casey Foundation. So I was always drawn to it. I will say when I got turned on to Oprah, that when Oprah changed her model from
Mm-hmm.
shock jock, I will say, to
Yeah.
more self-help and self-awareness, that was the first time I heard of Dr. Wayne Dyer.
Mm.
And that started it. And I moved to Colorado when I was 29. I went to a religious science center, Mile High Church, and I just kept going. Even though life, there was challenges, I've been homeless. There was always something. Even during the time, I will say I was atheist for a short amount of time as a
Mm-hmm.
teenager, and
Mm-hmm.
angry and mad. I even would even ask, okay, if there's a God, I need to know.
Mm-hmm.
And I got an answer very quickly, very clearly. So I was always, even when I went to a library, even if I was so poor I could not buy the book, I would read the book. Anything from Deepak Chopra. I remember when Shirley MacLaine came Out on a Limb. I read my mom's. I still have that old paperback.
Oh yeah, God, I love that book.
So it
On
was
the Limb.
always me, and it's always is me, because I always say I will never stop learning. My joke is when people say, "Oh, I know everything," I say, "Well, you would be vapor. You be ether." So I'm still learning.
I can't imagine anyone ever having the courage and the guts and the audacity to say that. I'm with you. I always say to people when I stop saying I'm a student, please tell me to stop speaking. Um, because I just can't imagine, you know. I mean, it really is in the richness of what you don't know that you actually discover what you do know. It's very interesting because, you know, we spent some time together um, in your hometown, but I'm connecting some dots here, and I want to remind people to ask questions or interact with us, and we love that. But that being said, when you said childhood calling, I went, me too. So that would be true. And people have said to me, and maybe they said it to you, um, "Oh, you're so lucky," and I go, in a Southern Baptist community, that's probably just a few hundred people that don't know how to spell metaphysics, may still not. Um, Lucky, I I don't think that was my first thought that I would be lucky, but it was something that I couldn't tear it out of me. I couldn't get it cut out. I denied it. It caused more pain than joy in the beginning years of my life because I'm like, I don't understand it. Because, you know, back then, as you're saying, and I think this is a key point, that there wasn't meetup.com. You didn't find a, you know, TikTok group, or you didn't find Insta team players to follow and everybody share like they do now. I mean, it's just like, I have to get off of that stuff sometimes because it's like, is it just all going to be self help now? I mean,
Well,
you know
yeah,
what I mean. But
yeah,
back then, you were an island, and unless you were in New York or you know L.A. probably, but otherwise you're like, I know what I know inside, or I feel what I feel inside. But I wish I had a mirror to see it, and it wasn't until I was 19. The other thing you said that I thought was interesting was at 29, and that's when I got into a greater awareness of my own journey and myself. So we must have been from another mother or something.
yeah. Well, I grew up in a deep south of New Orleans,
Yeah.
and sometimes when people came over to her house, my mom hid her. A lot of people might not know this name, Jean Dixon books. She used
Hmm.
to, she worked with Kennedy as a psychic, so things got moved. Certain books got moved. We don't talk about this here. I got kicked
Hmm.
out of catechism because my mom said, "Out in the world, you're Catholic, but at home, we could talk about whatever you want to talk about." Uh,
Mm.
for is that was called, it was called New Age back then.
Yes.
You know, it was called New Age, and but even then, down in New Orleans in the South, and you're from the South Temple, it, there was a lot in my family still, a lot of like strong
Hmm.
Baptists, strong like fire and
Hmm.
brimstone thing that I remember I had a cousin that got mad if I wore red. Told my mom that girls can't wear. I mean, it was just
Oh my word!
so. It's
I
well,
haven't heard. I've heard of a lot of things. I haven't heard of that one.
yeah,
What's
just
that
like
about? What's
what
that about?
because it meant that a woman was easy if she wore red, if she wore red lipstick.
Oh my
And
word!
even my mom said,
I'm gonna
"Honey,
wear red next week.
I know." It's like, oh my goodness
Oh,
gracious.
that's
So I
crazy.
believe we've come a long way, but the only person I could really talk to was maybe my mom, my aunt, my great. It was is more than most people, but with friends it was hard, and I'm still shy. People are shocked. I'm doing spirits work route because actually I'm an introvert.
Hmm.
So with girlfriends it was hard because I couldn't be like, when they ask you why aren't you going to church on Sunday, well, my mom wasn't attached to that. We went to a UNE church sometimes on Saturday, and if I didn't feel like going, My mom always said, churches is within thyself. If you don't want to go and you're tired and I'm tired, we're good. We'll do something else. We'll read a book or read something from a unity book or a metaphysical book or something, and we'll discuss it. That's how that was. So I'm so grateful for my mom and my dad that his friends were in the military and they were very metaphysical. Now you find
Uh-huh.
that stuff on YouTube. So when everyone's like, "Did you know the government used psychics?" I'm like, "Yep, always
Mm-hmm.
have known it."
That
So I
always have known it. Are your parents still living?
no, my mom,
Okay.
yeah, they passed.
Mine either. I miss, you really appreciate them. And the more and more you live, the more they become famous and your heroes.
Yeah, when
You
I
know, that's
when
for
I
that's for sure.
yeah when I look and I am so happy how far I'll say New Thought metaphysics has come.
Mhm.
Because there's a difference between, I say, self help too and
Yes.
metaphysics. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, people think it's one and the same. It's like if you still have stuff going on, mental health crisis, unhealed pains, emotional stuff, going through challenges, even with drug addiction, alcohol, whatever it is, that's
Mhm.
different than that's different than metaphysics, at least from my perspective.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, describe that for us. What
Well,
what's your what's
meta
your connection with that? The meta
well,
beyond the physical. What does that mean for you?
the meta behind the physical. So I'll give this. I was even bullied at work when I was waiting tables. I moved to Baltimore, Maryland in my 20s.
Hmm.
And it was a different culture coming from New Orleans. I experienced a huge amount of racism. And my mom
Oh
sent
wow.
a huge amount. So in New Orleans, I was in this bubble where my whole
Yes.
neighborhood kind of looked like a Benetton commercial, if people remember that. I grew up with white, Puerto Rican, Cuban. There was a huge Vietnamese culture. So I grew up with everything around the French Quarter. I
Oh
grew
yeah.
up around LGBTQ. When I moved by that Mason Dixon line, I was like, oh, holy cow. Find
Yeah.
a
Hmm.
metaphysical shop. um, I took me forever to find a unity church because when I asked people, they're like, "We don't do that." I got shamed that I wasn't
Sure.
Christian.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So during that time, I will say it was a dark night of the soul. It was very challenging, but as I look back, but I remember I told my mom, I called my mom suffered from depression, and I said, I feel lonely because I feel like I'm an ET. I feel like I'm on an island.
Hmm.
Because even some of my friends in New Orleans that saw me wearing crystals, there wasn't so much judgment. Oh, that's just her. That's the way she is. Her mom and her grandmothers are all into that, but there was no like venom towards it. I
Right.
read the book Handbook to Higher Consciousness when we had a slow period of me waiting tables. And by me reading it, I watched my managers go, "You don't even care you're being bullied anymore." So that I didn't have money for a therapist then, and
Hmm.
there was no free therapy. Now you can find free therapists. Some places you can find support. In Colorado, you could find help and support, even if it's for 20 minutes. Well, back then you couldn't. There was no free in Maryland, and I even looked. So I was like, "Okay, Spirit, you and I." And my mom said, "I'm going to send this book to you." She always tapped into her inner intuition. She said, "Read this book from cover to cover, and let's talk every night." And in 4 or 5 days, I felt better for me because it took me out of me being victim to being bullied, like I was bullied as a little girl, to, oh no, I'm going to rise above this low frequency. Now,
Hmm.
I'm not recommending that's a cure for people during a mental health thing. I wasn't drinking, I wasn't suicidal or anything like that. I was just depressed and felt alone. But what
Sure.
came out of me reading that book, I was in college. I met a different group of people in college that were not born and raised there, and they became my woo woo friends. We
Hmm.
were like a secret little woo woo club, and I found a Unity store, and I would go see my mom in Virginia Beach. At the ARE was more metaphysical. I created space, and during that time I got promoted. I made more money, which allowed me to have more space to hang around more, I'll say, metaphysical people. But even guys I dated, I didn't care. I started wearing like the stuff I had. I started wearing all my. I didn't care. It's like a shift happened that I am this higher consciousness, divine creator, universal field, God, Brahma, whatever you want to call it, Christ consciousness.
Sure.
And when everybody was like, I'm offended by your crystal, you should wear a crucifix. I said, well, I'm offended by your crucifix, you should wear a crystal. And I would just keep it moving because I'm a smart aleck. I just stopped it and neutralized it.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah.
chose to stop being a victim, but a victor. Because I started seeing maybe this is a test. I even for me, I went in my head and said, well, maybe I'm being tested to raise my consciousness around people who are just bothered that I'm wearing a turquoise ring. Like, really? Like, you are triggered by a turquoise ring? Sweet heavens, we got bigger problems. Did you even worry about a turquoise ring?
Well, I tell you though, I really I resonate with so much of what you're saying. You know, BB, my wife, is from New Orleans, and it's like the whole world is represented in New Orleans, and everything is cool. You
Mm-hmm.
know, but that wasn't my upbringing. It was all, Southern Baptists. I remember the one Jewish family that they pointed out, and that was it. So if you didn't fit in the Baptist, then you were destined to a lifelong burning. and and then I found unity, or it found me, or whatever. And so then everything was that bubble. And wherever I was, whatever I was thinking, whomever I loved, everything was cool. And I really forgot. I was clueless when I would get out, like in the quote unquote real world, and I'd realize, oh, people could kill me. Oh, I'm heavily judged. Oh, this isn't easy. But one of the things that's kind of coming up for me, just talking to you, is a lot of times people will see you at the Althea Center and you look like a model. I mean, your inner beauty and your outer beauty and who you are. People will see me all dressed up doing a talk somewhere or whatever. And there's this perception thing, like we almost like we get off on standing on a platform and being known or being public. And I can't speak for anyone but myself, but I can say for me, it was the opposite. That I'm extremely extroverted, yes. You've seen me, but I am extremely introverted. And I would deny it. I didn't want to be public. I didn't want to show up. I didn't want to be a speaker. I was happy sitting around just having my drinks and slurring my words and denying that part, you know. And but every time something would happen or a speaker didn't show up or something, or the pain of not moving out of the cocoon phase was greater, that I finally surrendered to it. But I do think that's important because I don't think that everybody understands that. Oh, well, it comes natural for you. No, no. Now, in taking away those layers, yes, maybe the natural lived there, but I had that natural so tucked in, it took a long time to find it. So I just wanted to highlight that because it's so evident that's been part of your journey too, that it's not always easy being out loud and saying, here I am, this is it. I'm not in the silent witness protection program anymore. I'm here. This is what I say. This is how I feel. I'm going for it. It's I just hope that other people can relate to that because it's not easy, to make those initial jumps in your life. It really isn't.
It isn't, and you're correct. I'm glad you brought this up because people will look at me like you must have been a cheerleader. Nope. I was in the marching band.
You must have
I
been a
was on the
cheerleader.
spelling bee. I'm a nerd. I'm a geek. This room is filled with books. I got books on the floor. I got to get organized. No, no, I wasn't. I modeled and acted for years. I got so frustrated with part of the Hollywood scene. You and I both know an amazing producer, director. And I got frustrated in 2017. I got sick of being hit on by men. They didn't care if I was married. I got sick of every ism you could think of. Being a woman, being a black woman, assumptions, ism about weight. You're too fat, you're too skinny, you're too this,
Mhm.
you're not black enough, you're brown, you're too brown. I mean, it was like I had to take a break, which I'm glad I did. But a mutual friend of ours said it's time for you to get back in. But I see the correlation now. My mother got me into modeling and acting, but
Mm,
it led me to be able to be on stage.
yes.
Yeah, because I did not see the Althea Center coming, and I also have an CSL ministry called Divine Feminine Evolution. I just did a mini group, women's group at Mile High Church, and I it hit me Sunday that all right, I know I'm a minister, but it really hit me because it's been hitting me that we work on the weekends. Everyone else, a lot of people
Everybody else is off, and
off.
we're
Yeah,
on.
time to
Mhm.
prep, and people must like, oh, you must eat this up. I'm like, no, I'm doing this for spirit, because people make up stories about ministry, and they also make up stories about our finances, our life, and all
Mhm.
that, because I could have stayed in corporate and make $150,000 a year like that,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
I would have been in a cube and I was hiding in my car. And a long time ago, 2008, and I got to thank Michael Beckwith, some kind of way get in touch with him. I don't know how, because he didn't know me from Adam. And he said, you're supposed to be on stage. What are you waiting for? And then he kept on talking. He
Mhm.
didn't know my name or anything. He just stopped, looked at me, grabbed me. You're supposed to be up here.
That's
And it took
beautiful.
me a while to get there, but I didn't even, I interviewed for the job, but I went there to speak. I meditated. I said, okay, Spirit, I'm a minister. Now what? I'm starting my focus ministry, but you're starting that from the ground up. And a clear voice said, you need to contact a minister and find out how they get all these speaking gigs. And I was like, oh, shoot. And I was scared. I was
Mhm.
nervous.
Mhm.
But I always remember, if I don't do what I'm my mission to do, it may turn on me and kill me. I don't want to manifest some weird disease
Right.
or get some throat. Most of my childhood life, I had throat problems, strep throat. Always had strep. Always had all kind of weird stuff. That was about me speaking.
The I am, right? The power.
Speaking the voice. So
Mhm.
you're correct that we put ourselves out there for the divine. Anyone that's doing this is doing this for divine, and I even believe artists such as actors or say people that do artwork, that's their stage. That's their stage too. So, like, it's been a calling for you, Temple. I remember seeing you years ago before we met. I was like, oh my gosh, she's awesome. I can't do that. I remember thinking in my head, because I'm like, the little part of me. And then
That's funny.
I spoke at Althea on February 12th, and they all said, we've been looking for a minister for years. You want to interview? And two of my girlfriends said, that's yours. And I was like, no. And I meditated on it. It was like, you got to do this. And I was like, well, I don't want to get the spiritual 2x4. Let's see. And in
Mhm.
August, I was hired, and I didn't, someone, a congregant that's been there over 20 years said, one of the reasons we hired you is that you didn't push it. You didn't bother people. You weren't begging for the job, and you had a sense you didn't care. And I said, well, I didn't, because it wasn't about me.
Yeah.
Because I'm not doing it for the money. Like you said, people make up stories like, "Oh, they must be making 300,000."
Oh my.
Oh
Oh
God,
my God. You girl. I could spend 5 podcasts on the stories that have been made up about me. I mean, just unbelievable. The recent one was I what was it? I funneled the money out of where I served took hundreds of thousands of dollars so I could move to California. Well, that's like one of the craziest things. Like, first of all, excuse me, I am an intelligent person. And first of all, if I stole $100,000, I wouldn't steal a paperclip because I would have to come back and do karma and probably have a
Yeah.
paperclip factory.
Yeah.
But if I were going to steal just a few $100,000, California would be the last freaking place I'd ever move to
I
because
know.
you'd go through it, in
I
a
know
couple of
about
years.
a couple of
But
months.
oh yeah, the crazy stories. We know because it's public information
Yeah.
that Joel Osteen is a multimillionaire,
Yeah.
rich rev, but they're few and far in between, and good for them, all of them that are. However, you wouldn't be too smart if that's what you set out to do, because
Yeah.
it's not really a profession that across the board really is known for that. I mean, you could carry a ball up and down the field going, yay, and do, a whole lot better. But yeah, it is the whole field is something else. And I'm just glad that you still said yes, because it is, I think we're at such a greater call now, that people are called to speak out. And, it's like, on one hand, somebody was saying the other day, well, everybody now is becoming a spiritual leader. The guy that owns a gym, the one that owns a health food store. And in a way, that's really good. We can't have too many, with
Yeah.
all the things going on, right? We just need
Yep.
more and more people to be awake and to be alert. And, I know for me that the certificates or the certifications, I don't dishonor them. But at the end of the day, it was me and God figuring all this stuff out
Well,
with the
yeah.
team of people.
Yeah.
Those trophies on the wall, maybe I felt like I earned it, or maybe it gave me more permission to feel it was okay that I have a microphone. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, the things you face and the things you go through, it's that divine path. That's just really all there is to it. you know?
Yeah.
I
It's
remember how red I turned. Talk about red your shirt. I put this little banner back here today of me in red, but I remember you introduced me to your community. Oh, this is my girl crush. I turned so red. I was like, "What? What's he talking about?" That was so sweet. I just love your energy. I love your childhood spirit. It's just so beautiful, and it is that humbling part of life that I think keeps us fresh and raw. Don't you?
yes. I do what I when I a couple of times I've seen you speak before you met me. To me, your presence was honest and unapologetic. It was a don't care, which I admire.
Mm,
I could tell when someone, I don't care if it's a minister or a, say, famous speaker. I
hmm.
know when it's fake after a while.
Yeah, you can tell.
Yeah.
You can tell.
You went with
Hmm.
the flow. I think it was a AG&T. They were behind time, overtime. Someone went over, under. There was all kind of things going on. And you were grounded in the present moment.
Oh, yeah.
And I could be with you. And I felt the energy of everyone else go, wow. Because
Mm,
everyone forgot about all the other things. A tech was going on or something like that. You
sure.
brought everyone back. Every time I've seen you, even when I guess, like I watched you online, it was you being you
Hmm.
without, even if you've done the talk 5, 10 times, I don't know it because
Hmm.
the passion behind it, you can't fake that passion.
No, you can't. You
That's the
you
way
you
I,
you
uh,
can't fake it.
I
No.
felt. And one thing I've always believed in being humble. I've been blessed to be around a lot of new thought ministers. Some have been humble, and I'm going to say it, and some haven't.
Mhm.
Some haven't.
I
And
would say most that I've met haven't.
Yeah, they haven't. It's like,
Yeah.
no, we're channels. I love saying
Hmm.
it's not. I My new phrase is, it's not me but thee.
Mm. That's a good one.
It's not me but
It's not
thee.
me, but the, yeah.
He, the thee and me are doing this together. I have to get me out of the way. Like, yeah, I put
Yes.
makeup on and like fashion and everything and all that, but you know it. It takes a lot of energy. My talks at Althea is 20 minutes.
Hmm.
But it's hours throughout the week preparing and like, okay, Spirit, what's my talk title in 2 weeks?
Hmm.
What's this month talk title? And then sometimes how you get nothing. You're like, really? I have nothing.
Oh yeah, I can't ever go down that rabbit hole. I was telling someone I was doing consulting for public speaking, and she was picking my thoughts brain, and because I used to do a lot of that public speaking teaching, and she said this and that, and I said, well, the one thing that even almost 40 years later that I just cannot do is I cannot have the thought I have no idea what I'm going to talk about, because the moment I do, there's tension, and I I mean it is not good.
No, it's
So
not good.
it
No.
is just a rabbit hole that just goes on and on and on. So I'm not going to imply that I haven't done it in a long time, but it's definitely something that I do my best to stay away from, because it just closes everything off, and then nothing seems to work, and you revisit and stress about it, and then try to find something old, and it won't work because you're already in a different frame of mind. It's really something. Well, all you tuning in, what we're saying is it's always easier just to be non-edited and just be yourself. That's for sure.
To be yourself. And what I'm
Mhm.
saying is, when I say that, when I ask if I don't get anything, I know it's always provided, because
It
Spirit God
always
is
comes.
always there. So
That's
I
right. It
I had
always comes.
it always comes. I had a talk title for next Sunday. I got it on Saturday, but I was like, nope, that's my head. I'm close, but that's my head. And Sunday, I got it for the next 2 Sundays. I'm like, thanks. And, and I wrote it down, and I was like, okay, got it. And it's all flowing. But I also see that that's for all of our lives,
Oh
to
yeah.
really to stop, take that pause, and say, okay, what's next? And sometimes what's next is to do nothing, or sit and be still, or
Hmm.
relax. It sometimes it's like, it really is that being quiet and trusting that the answer will
Absolutely.
be provided.
Well, someone, people say to me along the way, weren't you upset that the mic didn't work or that? And I go, those are my best moments. I love those. I love it when, something happens and it's unexpected, or the baby cries or whatever. Because I just love to bring it in. And the other thing is when you're up there and you're talking and you're having some exchange, and people are looking at you, and there's the space within the space, and all of a sudden you get this message that you're supposed to talk about something, and it's like, I'm supposed to talk about that, and I feel like I'm having this two-way conversation. Like, I'm supposed to be talking about that, but I'm talking about this, and I'm going back and forth, but yet I'm still talking,
Yeah.
but yet I have to surrender to it, otherwise it will hook me and mess me up. But I'll start talking about whatever it is, and without fail somebody will come up to me at the end and say, it's one thing for people to say I related, or thank you, or you were talking just to me. That's one layer, and I think people say that, and I think sometimes people say that because they don't know what else to say. But when somebody says, this morning on the way here, that happened to my grandfather, how did you know? That is like raw,
Whoa.
right? That's
Yeah.
like
I've had
that's
those. Yep.
that's that raw, and it's just, I love the divine, that we are so connected, and we need to be more connected, in our world, in our society. For us, supposedly, to be more connected than ever, in many ways, we're more disconnected, than ever. But it's pretty fascinating. Well, tell us about your group that you are a co-founder of. I saw you were there at Mile High. Um, Tell us about the group. What is it? Can someone else join it? What's its purpose?
Well, Divine Feminine Evolution. The website should be completed pretty soon. You can, I think it'll be, I think I sent Andrea an email on it, but it's Christina Divine Feminine Evolution
Okay.
dot org. Um, and Christina at Divine Feminine is the email address as well.
Okay.
However, that is a woman's focus ministry that I'm going to have events, a woman's retreat. Mile High for years has had this event called Sacred Sisters. So
Yeah.
I did a mini workshop, but which is going to be a bigger workshop. It's about the divine feminine, how to embrace it, embody it, and the evolution of it.
Oh,
So
that's
and
beautiful.
that's what, and I'm going back through past the suffrage movement, like
Mm.
going back to when there was Egyptian female pharaohs, and that we're back at that.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah,
I
we're back.
love that.
And history has proven it.
Hmm.
It's still proving it because the Me Too movement, that was not any. Everyone's like, "This is amazing where it came from." I said it was building up for years. Because you
Hmm.
look at the women's movement of the 70s and the suffrage movement, you just keep going back. And like the movie Hidden Figures, which was like a hidden movie. And when that
Yes.
came out, girls and women are like, oh my God, I got bullied for being a math person or an engineer or whatever. So a lot of the turmoil and the strife that we're seeing on the planet is, I call it old man Winters shutting its eyes,
Hmm.
and the
Yeah.
goddess is here. And that's not only the goddess for women, but also for men. So that's my other ministry through CSL. The Althea Center, which you can go to altheacenter.org, that was founded by Nona Brooks, Fannie Brooks, the Brooks sisters, and Melinda Kramer, who were New Thought divine scientists who Nona Brooks studied under Emma Curtis Hopkins, who Ernest Holmes studied. I mean, we're talking, and they founded this church that's over 100 years old. It opened in 1922 in Denver, Colorado. Four women, yeah, that couldn't even vote. It was not
Right.
okay for four women to own, I would say, a New Thought metaphysical church center. We call it a center. So I have those are my two ministries. I'm passionate about women and also men tapping into their divine feminine energy that is rising. That's
Mhm.
the peace, the creativity, the healing, the meditation. The actually That's what we need to focus on the planet. Because if we look at the war that's going on in the Middle East, all wars for the past 200 years and more are funded by what? A patriotic, and it's all men. They're setting
Mhm.
off missiles. And I'm not putting
Mhm.
down men, but it's a group of men in a particular power struggle.
Of course, and
That,
it's false power.
yeah, and it's false
It's
power because
mhm.
there are young men that I know, they don't want this. They're like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. So
Mhm.
that's what I feel, there's a calling for the divine feminine evolution to come up. And that's how come I named that as my ministry too. It is time for all of that, for the peace, for to really come back to peace, love, and unity, to come back to that we are all sentient, beautiful beings under oneness. No matter what religion you're from, no matter you're Muslim or Jewish or Hindu or what atheist, doesn't matter. There's one source, and we're all connected to that one source.
Mhm.
So I'm passionate about that as well, which is so funny that I'm in Althea Center, which is divine science, founded by women. So I'm still in that flow. And I believe all the women of New Thought from the 1800s, 1700s, now you're part of that temple. It's
Mhm.
bringing that up. And
Hmm.
that's how come there's a battle of the old.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they want to keep the ownership, I
yeah,
think, away from the women, um, and and it's like I would always remind people when I was serving in a unity, Myrtle founded unity, and
yeah,
don't ever confuse yourself.
yeah,
I mean, Myrtle is the one that said this stuff works, and here we go. And Charles going, what? And of course, he joined her later,
yeah,
but but it's interesting, isn't it? It
yeah.
it really is. Um, well, I applaud you for the work that you're doing, and by the way, if you are putting any of these things on video or with curriculum or anything like that, I'd love to have you be featured on ILLI, the institute. It's more like a mystery school, but
Oh,
its intention is about all of this, that we're not divided and how we can all hold the togetherness, the being connected. So just remember me and us, and I always love to feature you and who you are. One of the first things I noticed about you that I went, yes, is I've met so many women speakers, and I'm not, well, I don't need to explain myself, but being a speaking coach, you know I've met so many women speakers. I don't know what class they took or didn't take, but they'll get up and their voice changes and
yeah.
they start talking like this. And I go, is that how you tell your husband to take out the trash? Do you say, Joe, honey, can you take out the trash? Or do you go, Joe, can you take out? I'm like, I love your strong. So you might have had some things, growing up, but you got the voice. And I just love that. I thank you for invoking and calling that forth in you, because it just amazes me. It's like, just talk with your natural voice and
Yeah.
leave it at that.
Well, you know what? You bringing this up. I'm writing a book right now. Working with someone that I'm not going to say the title yet, but it's about me releasing my first marriage, and
Oh,
he
wow.
was a narcissist. And I used to, even as a teenage girl, got picked on for my voice. Some of the women in my family have deep voices. My mom didn't. But
Hmm.
I read somewhere girls get a combination of both voices. Isn't that awesome?
That's so cool. Yes.
When a girl gets something about the ear and the brain and the vocal cords. And my dad had a very deep voice, like James Earl Jones.
Hmm.
And some of the women in the family had deep voices. So I realized I got most of that from my dad's side of the family. And when I got with this individual, it wasn't until I got with an acting coach, and she's like, what is going on with you? I started talking, and we're talking, I'm in my 30s. So I
Uh-huh.
had some unhealed stuff in this lighter voice. And it was like, oh my God, it was so subconscious. And that's another thing that women need to heal. I know several ministers who put on this other voice, and I'm like, mm-mm.
No,
And some of them,
please.
I told them, they've gotten mad at me. One of them doesn't talk to me because I said, I've known you too long for you to be playing. I call it the Barbie girl voice. That's what it
Uh-huh.
reminds me of. If the Barbie doll could talk, and now since we have a framework with the movie,
Right.
it's like, oh, because he told me, that day I came home, and he said, what's up with your voice? I said, when you met me, I sounded like this right now. You didn't like that, and subconsciously I changed it for you.
Wow.
And I said, I'm not anymore. We got divorced, obviously. And I was
Hmm.
like, oh, and I worked with a therapist, I worked with a practitioner, and it didn't take long that I was like, oh my God. But I also saw it as a lesson. So now when I hear women do that, especially women speakers or women that are thought metaphysical leaders, ministers like you, Temple, and I continue to call lovingly. I will pull them on the side and said, "What's the mouse voice?
Right. What
What's
is
the
happening?
baby girl
Yeah.
centerfold
Why are you
voice? What are
shrinking?
you doing?"
Why
Because
are you
I've
shrinking?
seen you yell at your man, And I know you made me want to run. I was like,
That's so funny.
yeah,
Oh, that's so
it's,
funny.
I realized subconsciously. So thank you for bringing that in the room. That my generation, even some young girls, there's a beautiful young lady that I love like a daughter. She's is taking her months to get her voice back. Because me and my husband's like, who is that on the phone? That's not the person we know.
Mhm.
And she's worked with I realize it's a thing, so the
It
blessing
is, it is a thing, and
is
I've
a thing.
attempted to tell family members about a nephew or a niece, or I
Yeah,
would go, something's off
yeah, with the voice.
because of the way they speak their name, because of the way they speak their space. Something's off. Oh, nothing's off. They're just shy. No,
No,
something's off. I
yeah,
just mentioned this last week about, and I hear that a third one's coming. I love Sister Act, and I love Sister Act 2. And as you know, that's what Whoopi said. If you want to go somewhere, you want to be somebody, you got to stop and pay attention. And so you're stepping into your universal, your energy field, and stepping into it in that way. And I was telling them how a friend of mine, Vi Higginson, she's lived in Harlem all her life. Cissy Houston was like her best friend and on her board. Very well known. She did Mama, I Want to Sing, one of the longest running, if not the longest running, at Apollo Theater. I mean, she's been there, done that, but her passion is for children. And so she will teach her children, the kids that come off the street, the homeless. She tells them, say your name.
yeah,
And you're right. 95% of them will go, my name is Tommy. Say your name,
yeah,
son. Say your name. And those kids have been the
mm,
backup singers for Madonna. They performed in Japan. They did a choir number on America's Got Talent. I mean, they have gone places. And one of the reasons is it started out knowing and claiming, this is who I am. The I am that I am is who I am. And I
yeah.
stand here before you. And I think that's mine and Reverend Christina Jones's message today in all of this is stand for your name and claim what you are and who you are, and step into that greater horizon of your life. It's not always easy. It's harder not to. It's not always simple. It's often complex.
Mm,
But in the richness of all that, there's something emerging within you that exceeds anything beyond your current imagination.
yeah.
And we're giving you that blessing. And Christina, you're a joy. I'm welcoming and looking forward to our ongoing friendship,
Yes.
knowing each other better and greater, and how we can support each other. And I just thank you for the work you're doing, not only at Althea and with the Divine Feminine, but also on the globe. I thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Temple. Thank you for being I'm gonna say the big sister.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a
because
blessing.
we
That's a
we
blessing.
I'm about to cry. We women have got to come together, and I'm blessed to have some women in my life. They're in their late 80s, and I said, "Don't you
Hmm.
dare die on me, because we need you." You know, and
Yeah,
I mean,
me
I know
too.
you're not in that age, but we need you. We need every generation
We
because
need us all. We
you know.
need us all. I know. I'm like you.
And,
Most of my friends have always been so much older than I, and
yeah,
it's shifting as I'm getting further up on the Eiffel Tower. But there's no no doubt about it, because I know that regardless of the number of years, I will always be young. I know that. That's a clear commitment I've made to myself, and I know that about you too. But I want to thank you for your love and your talent, And it'll be interesting just watching your amazing gifts continue to unfold. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We love it when you're with us, and most of you watch it later on. Still put your comments in because we love reading them and connecting with you. That's what it's all about. And thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Illy and Global Peace Workers, for your sponsorship. We are so grateful. Bless you, everyone, on this amazing journey we call life.